I didn't know my life was about to fracture over a birthday gift. I was sitting across the table from him, watching the candlelight flicker against a necklace I had spent weeks choosing. I remember feeling nervous in that quiet, hopeful way you feel when you want someone you love to feel seen. I had planned the evening carefully. His favorite restaurant, his favorite wine. A handwritten card I rewrote 3 times because the words didn't feel big enough for what I thought we were building. He opened the box. And then he looked at me and said flatly, "This looks cheap. Did you even try? Sometimes I wonder why I agreed to marry you." The words landed heavier than the jewelry ever could. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I didn't apologize. I just said, "Noted." I watched his face change, like he was disappointed I didn't give him the reaction he wanted. Anger. Tears. Something dramatic he could later use to justify what he was already planning. I didn't disappear. I didn't raise my voice. I stayed exactly where I was. 2 days later, his sister came over. She opened a drawer she wasn't supposed to open, looking for a phone charger, and accidentally uncovered something that made the air in the room go cold. When she asked about it, my fiancé's face didn't turn angry or defensive. It went completely blank. That's when I learned that sometimes the person you're planning to marry has already decided how the story will end, long before you ever walk down the aisle. I'm 31 years old. I had been with him for 3 years. We got engaged 8 months ago, after what I believed was a stable, loving relationship. He worked in marketing, made decent money, and cared deeply about appearances. I worked in tech, earned well, but I was practical, thoughtful. I believed effort mattered more than price tags. I didn't realize that to him, everything was already being measured, documented, weighed. The gift wasn't just not good enough. It was a data point. And the drawer his sister opened didn't just hold a business card. It held the truth about who he really was and what he had been planning to do to me. This is about a necklace that wasn't expensive enough, a comment that went too far, and a secret plan I was never meant to find until fate forced it into the light. When I look back now, the scariest part isn't what he said at dinner. It's how normal everything felt before that moment. I was 28 when we met, fresh into my career in tech, finally earning enough to feel secure without needing to prove anything to anyone. I wasn't chasing luxury. I liked structure. I liked intention. I liked knowing why I chose the things I chose. He came into my life through mutual friends, charming in a way that felt effortless, confident, social. He worked in marketing, thrived in environments where image mattered, where perception was currency. People liked him instantly. I did too. We started dating seriously a few months later. In the beginning, our differences felt complementary. He liked nice restaurants, curated experiences, polished details. I liked planning, thoughtfulness, long conversations about where life was going. He talked about ambition. I talked about stability. It didn't feel like a clash. It felt like balance. For the first 2 years, we rarely fought. If there were disagreements, they were small. What restaurant to choose? How much to spend on a weekend trip? Which social events mattered and which didn't? Nothing that felt like a warning sign. Nothing that made me question his commitment to me. When he proposed 8 months ago, I said yes without hesitation. I truly believed we were building toward the same future. But engagement changed something. Not all at once, not dramatically, just enough that, looking back, I can see the pattern forming. It started with comments disguised as jokes, remarks about the ring not being impressive enough when compared to his friends' fiancés, suggestions that our wedding venue might be a little modest for his professional circle, jokes about my car being embarrassing when we attended events with his colleagues. I brushed it off as stress. Wedding planning does that to people, I told myself. Pressure, expectations, social comparison. I didn't want to be the fiancé who overanalyzed every comment. I wanted peace. But the comments didn't stop. They escalated. He started framing things as expectations rather than preferences, the kind of language that subtly implies you're falling short without ever saying it outright. You should want better for us. This is the standard people expect. If we're getting married, we need to upgrade. I noticed how often we really meant me. I was the one who needed to improve. I was the one who needed to step up. I was the one who didn't quite get it yet. Still, I loved him. And love has a way of convincing you that discomfort is temporary and effort will be rewarded. I didn't know yet that, while I was planning a marriage, he was already thinking about how to exit one. The shift didn't happen overnight. It crept in quietly, wearing the mask of helpful feedback and high standards. Around the second month of our engagement, the comments became more frequent and more specific. He started noticing what my choices said about me, about us, about the future he claimed he wanted. It wasn't just the ring anymore. At a dinner with his coworkers, he leaned over and whispered that my car was a little embarrassing, parked next to theirs. When I laughed it off, he smiled like he'd done me a favor. Another time, while scrolling through wedding photos online, he sighed and said our venue looked fine. Then added that fine doesn't exactly impress people. People, always people. I began to notice how often he spoke through an audience, how my worth seemed to rise or fall depending on who was watching. He introduced me as my fiancée. She works in tech, before saying my name, like my job title explained my presence. When conversations drifted toward my hobbies or interests, he gently redirected them, steering the spotlight back to vacations, brands, or his friends' plans. He could talk for half an hour about someone else's luxury trip, but when I spoke about something I cared about, his attention wandered. I told myself I was imagining it. Wedding planning is stressful, I thought. Everyone gets a little critical. Everyone wants things to be perfect. I didn't want to start a fight over tone or phrasing. I didn't want to be sensitive. So I adapted. I started second-guessing purchases, wondering whether something would be judged as cheap. I found myself upgrading small things, not because I wanted to, but because I didn't want the look on his face when he disapproved. I stopped sharing certain ideas altogether. The most unsettling part wasn't the criticism. It was the record-keeping. He remembered every moment I didn't meet his expectations, every time I chose practicality over prestige, every time I didn't step up. He'd bring them up later, casually, like evidence in a quiet case he was building. "You always settle," he said once, not unkindly. "You don't really push yourself," he added another time. "If we're going to be married, I need to know you can maintain a certain standard." A certain standard. I asked him what that meant. He smiled and said, "You'll get there." I didn't realize then how dangerous that sentence was, because it placed me permanently behind him, permanently needing to prove myself, permanently auditioning for a role I thought I already had. The birthday was coming up, and I wanted to do something meaningful. Not flashy, meaningful. I planned for weeks, thinking about what he'd mentioned liking, what suited his style, what would feel personal. I told myself this was a chance to remind him that effort doesn't always have to be expensive to be sincere. I didn't know he'd already decided how he would interpret whatever I gave him. By the time his birthday arrived, the air between us was already heavy. I just hadn't named it yet. And I certainly hadn't imagined that one gift, one comment, would expose a plan so calculated it would change how I saw our entire relationship forever. His birthday was 2 weeks ago. I had been planning it for a month, quietly, carefully, the way I always did things. I didn't want a spectacle. I wanted meaning. He had mentioned a jewelry store he liked in passing, one of those conversations that feels casual but lodges itself in your memory if you're paying attention. I went there on my lunch break one afternoon and spent nearly 3 hours walking between cases, asking questions, trying to picture what would actually suit him. I chose a necklace with a clean, elegant design. Not the most expensive piece in the store, but thoughtful, understated, something I believed matched who he said he was. I had it gift wrapped, wrote a card by hand, crossed out half the sentences, rewrote them until they felt honest. That night, we were at his favorite restaurant. I'd made the reservation weeks earlier, asked the sommelier for his preferred wine. The whole evening was calm, polished, the kind of setting where you feel like you're doing something right. After dessert, I slid the small box across the table. He opened it, and his expression fell. Not confusion, not surprise. Disappointment. "This looks cheap," he said without lowering his voice. I felt my stomach drop so fast it was almost physical. "It's from that store you liked," I said quietly. "The one you showed me last month." "I know where it's from," he replied. "But did you even look at their better pieces? This looks like something from a clearance sale." "It wasn't clearance," I said. "It's sterling silver, and—" "Did you even try?" he cut in. "Or did you just grab the first thing you saw?" I could feel people at nearby tables starting to glance over. I kept my voice low, steady. "I spent time picking it out. I thought you'd like the design." He placed the necklace back into the box like it offended him. "Sometimes I wonder why I agreed to marry you," he said. "You just don't get it. You don't understand quality. You don't understand what I need." I looked at the box, then at his face. There was no embarrassment there, no regret, just dissatisfaction, directed at me. "Noted," I said. "That's it?" he asked. That's your response? What else do you want me to say? I asked. You've made it clear how you feel. I want you to care enough to put real thought into things that matter to me. I did put thought into it, I said. You just decided it wasn't enough. We finished dinner in silence, drove home in silence. He went to bed early. I stayed in the living room until almost 2 in the morning, replaying one sentence over and over in my head. Sometimes I wonder why I agreed to marry you. Not I'm sorry I overreacted. Not I appreciate the effort, even if it missed the mark. Just a clean, casual statement that he questioned the entire relationship. The next morning, he acted like nothing had happened. Made coffee. Talked about his schedule. The necklace sat untouched in its box on the kitchen counter. I didn't bring it up. I didn't apologize. I didn't explain myself again. Over the next few days, something shifted inside me. I started noticing patterns I had ignored for a long time. The way he introduced me. The way he redirected conversations. The way he constantly suggested I needed to upgrade different parts of my life. The gift wasn't the problem. It was the lens he was using to evaluate me. And I was just beginning to understand how dangerous that lens really was. The house felt strangely quiet in the days after his birthday. Not because we weren't speaking, we were, but because something essential had shifted. The kind of shift you don't notice all at once, only in the way familiar spaces start to feel slightly misaligned, like a picture frame knocked crooked on the wall. He moved through his routines as if nothing had happened, made coffee, checked emails, talked about meetings and plans. The necklace stayed in its box on the kitchen counter, untouched, like a silent accusation I wasn't supposed to mention. I didn't bring it up. Not because I was afraid of conflict, but because I was listening to myself. I kept replaying his words in my head, not the tone, not the setting, but the certainty behind them. Sometimes I wonder why I agreed to marry you. It wasn't said in anger. It wasn't reactive. It was said like a conclusion he had reached long before that dinner. I started asking myself questions I hadn't allowed before. What kind of person looks at a gift chosen with care and sees only its price? What kind of partner uses disappointment as a weapon? And why did he feel so comfortable questioning our entire future over a necklace? I paid closer attention after that. The way he introduced me to people. This is my fiancée. She works in tech. Never my name first. Always my utility. The way he redirected conversations when I talked about my interests, but leaned in eagerly when someone mentioned luxury travel or career upgrades. The way suggestions always came framed as improvements I needed to make. I realized I had been quietly shrinking, adjusting, editing myself, trying to anticipate what would be enough for him next. That night, I sat alone in the living room, lights off, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, and asked myself a question that stopped me cold. If this is how he treats me before the wedding, what will marriage make worse? I didn't feel angry. I felt alert. The next morning, he kissed me goodbye like nothing was wrong. I went to work, answered emails, joined meetings, did everything I normally did. But underneath it all, a thread of clarity was forming. I wasn't overreacting. I wasn't being sensitive. I was finally seeing the pattern for what it was. He wasn't disappointed in the gift. He was disappointed that I didn't meet a standard he'd never clearly stated, but had been quietly documenting all along. I didn't know how literal that documentation was yet. I just knew something was off, something that couldn't be fixed by apologizing harder or spending more money. Sometimes the most dangerous moments in a relationship aren't the loud fights. They're the quiet ones, when you stop defending yourself and start paying attention. A week after his birthday, his sister came to visit. They were close, always had been. She was warmer than he was, more grounded, less obsessed with appearances. We'd always gotten along well, and I liked her for the simple reason that she spoke plainly. No performance, no subtext. That afternoon, they were in the living room catching up while I was in the kitchen making lunch. I could hear their voices drifting in and out, laughing, talking about work, about family. For a moment, it almost felt normal again. Then I heard her say, "Do you have a phone charger I can borrow?" "Check the bedroom dresser," he replied casually. I heard footsteps down the hall, a drawer opening. Then, silence. A few seconds later, her voice came back, louder than before, edged with confusion. "Why is there a lawyer's business card in your drawer?" The room went still. I couldn't hear his reply clearly, just a low murmur, but I felt the shift immediately. When his sister came back into the living room, the energy had changed completely. Her face was pale, her movements stiff, like she was carrying something heavy she hadn't meant to pick up. She looked at me. "Can I talk to you for a second?" She nodded toward the kitchen. We stepped away. There's something in the bedroom drawer, she said quietly. A divorce lawyer's card, with a date from 2 weeks ago. Did you know about this? My stomach dropped. No, I said, I didn't. I think you should go look. I walked down the hall, opened the dresser drawer, and there it was. A business card for a family law attorney, specializing in divorce and asset protection. On the back, in his handwriting, was an appointment date, a time, and a note that made my hands go cold. Discuss prenup modification and exit strategy. I stared at it, trying to make sense of the words. We weren't even married yet. We already had a prenup, basic, straightforward, something his parents had insisted on early in the engagement to protect premarital assets. I had agreed without hesitation. Transparency mattered to me. Fairness mattered to me. So why would he need an exit strategy now? I took a photo of this card, put it back exactly where I'd found it, and walked back to the kitchen. His sister was waiting, arms crossed, eyes searching my face. I saw it, I said. I had no idea. What exactly is he doing? She asked. I don't know, I replied, but we're about to find out. As if on cue, he walked into the kitchen. He looked at both of us and frowned. Why do you both look so serious? His sister didn't hesitate. I saw the lawyer's card, the one about divorce and modifying the prenup. What's going on? His face went completely blank. Not angry, not defensive, just empty, like a calculator resetting. That's private, he said. You're engaged, his sister shot back. Why do you need a divorce lawyer? It's complicated. No, I said quietly. It's not. He turned to look at me. Something in his eyes shifted. Not guilt, not love. Assessment. Fine, he said. You want the truth? I nodded. I've been planning my exit, he said. The wedding, the marriage, all of it. I'm going through with it because it makes sense financially and socially, but I'm not staying forever. His sister gasped. I just stared. You're marrying me, I said slowly, while planning to divorce me? Not immediately, he replied. Maybe 5 years. Long enough to build shared assets, get established, then I leave with better settlement terms. Settlement terms. The words didn't feel real in my mouth. We have a prenup, I said. That's why I met with a lawyer, he answered, to see how to modify it, or get around it. His sister looked horrified. You don't love her. I care about her, he said. But love isn't enough. I need security. I need a certain lifestyle. This is insurance. Insurance. In that moment, everything clicked. The gift, the comments, the constant disappointment, the quiet documentation of my supposed inadequacies. I took out my phone and pressed record. Say that again, I said. He frowned. What? Say again that you're marrying me as a financial strategy, with plans to divorce and take assets. He lunged for the phone, but I'd already sent the recording to myself, to cloud storage, and to his sister. You can't record me without consent, he snapped. This is a one-party consent state, I replied. I can record any conversation I'm part of, and you just admitted to planning marriage fraud. For the first time, his face showed real emotion. Panic. His sister backed toward the door. I'm leaving. I can't be part of this. You can't tell anyone, he said desperately. Everyone needs to know, she replied, and walked out. He turned back to me. Delete that recording. No, I'll sue you. For what? I asked calmly. Documenting you admitting to a plan to defraud me? Please do. I'd love to play this in court. His voice softened. I was confused. I didn't mean it like that. Save it, I said. I heard what you said. More importantly, I recorded it. I took a breath. The wedding is off. You can't just... I can, I said, and I am. And in that moment, the relationship didn't just end. It collapsed. After his sister left, the house went completely silent. Not the comfortable silence of routine, but the kind that presses against your ears and makes every breath feel too loud. He stood in the kitchen, hands clenched, pacing like an animal trapped in a cage. I stayed where I was, phone still warm in my hand, the recording saved in more places than he could ever reach. For the first time since I'd known him, I felt something close to fear, not of him, but of how thoroughly I had misjudged the man I was about to marry. You're blowing this out of proportion, he said finally. People have contingency plans all the time. Contingency plans aren't the same as premeditated fraud, I replied. My voice sounded steady, even to me. You met with a lawyer before our wedding to plan your divorce. You documented my failures to build a case. That's not anxiety, that's strategy. He rubbed his face. You don't understand how much pressure I'm under. Expectations, my parents, my career. So you decided to use me as leverage, I said, as a stepping stone. He didn't deny it. That was the lowest point. Not the insult at dinner, not the cheapness comment, not even the lawyer's card. It was the moment I realized my love had been a variable in someone else's calculation, that my kindness had been interpreted as compliance, that my patience had been mistaken for permission. I went upstairs and closed the bedroom door. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall where we'd planned to hang wedding photos. My chest felt hollow. 11 months of planning, 3 years of memories, 8 months of calling him my fiancé, all of it rearranged in my mind like a house built on a fault line. I cried then, quietly. Not for the wedding that wouldn't happen, but for the future I had imagined with someone who never intended to stay. For the version of myself who had trusted without keeping receipts. Downstairs, I could hear him on the phone, his voice urgent, bargaining, calling someone, anyone, to help him regain control of a situation that had slipped out of his hands. I didn't go back down. I didn't listen. I let the silence do what it needed to do. By morning, the grief had hardened into resolve. I knew 2 things with absolute clarity. I was not marrying him, and I was not letting him rewrite the story. Sometimes the darkest moment isn't when you're hurt. It's when you finally see the truth and realize there's no way to unsee it. I woke up the next morning with a strange calm settling over me. Not relief, not numbness, clarity. The kind that arrives when all the noise finally lines up into a single, unmistakable truth. He was already downstairs when I came out of the bedroom, sitting at the kitchen table with his phone in his hand, scrolling, stopping, typing, deleting. Damage control. I could see it in the tight set of his jaw, the way he avoided looking up when he heard my footsteps. "We need to talk," he said, without meeting my eyes. "We already did," I replied. "This doesn't have to go nuclear," he said quickly. "People don't need to know every detail. We can still handle this privately." Privately, quietly, conveniently. "For who?" I asked. He finally looked at me then. "For both of us." I shook my head. "No, for you." I told him exactly what was going to happen, calmly, without raising my voice. I would cancel the venue, call the caterer, call the photographer, notify the guest list. I would tell the truth when asked. Not the dramatic version, not a vindictive one, just the truth. "You'll ruin my reputation," he said. "You did that yourself," I answered. "I'm just not covering for you." "You're overreacting," he insisted. "We weren't even married yet." "Exactly," I said, and thank God for that. He tried one last angle, softening his tone, stepping closer, lowering his voice like he used to when he wanted something from me. "I was scared," he said. "Commitment does that to people. I handled it wrong. We can go to counseling. Reset. Start fresh." I looked at him and felt nothing. "You didn't panic," I said. "You planned. You documented. You tested me. You met with a lawyer. You admitted all of it. That's not fear. That's intent." I picked up my phone and dialed the venue while he stood there watching, stunned, as I put the cancellation into motion. When I hung up, I felt something lift from my chest. Not because it was easy, because it was final. By the end of the day, I had canceled everything that could be canceled and accepted the losses that couldn't. About $8,000 in non-refundable deposits. I wrote it off without hesitation. Marrying him would have cost me far more. His family called that evening. His mother was first, demanding, disbelieving. She said I must have misunderstood. That pre-wedding anxiety makes people say strange things. He admitted it on recording, I said. "Would you like to hear it?" There was a long pause. "Send it," she said quietly. I did. 20 minutes later, she called back, her voice unsteady. "I had no idea. I'm so sorry. This isn't how we raised him." "I believe you," I said. "But the wedding is still off." After that, I stopped explaining. I changed the locks, packed his things, arranged for his sister to pick them up so I wouldn't have to see him again. I didn't block his number immediately. I let the messages come in, angry, apologetic, manipulative, desperate, until they all started to sound the same. Then I blocked him. That was the turning point. Not the recording, not the lawyer's card, not even the insult at dinner. It was the moment I realized I didn't need him to understand why I was leaving. I just needed to leave. The next week unfolded like a slow, controlled demolition. I made the calls one by one. The venue first, then the caterer, the photographer, the florist. I didn't dramatize it. I didn't explain more than necessary. "The wedding has been canceled due to a serious issue," I said. Some were sympathetic, some were brisk. About $8,000 in deposits vanished with a few polite apologies and firm policies. I didn't flinch. Every dollar felt like tuition, paid to avoid a far more expensive mistake. Word spread quickly anyway. Weddings do that. Friends texted, family called. A few people asked what happened. I told them the truth when they asked directly, not the embellished version, not the softened one. The truth, that he had been planning to marry me with the intention of divorcing later for financial gain, that I found out before we signed anything, that the wedding was over. Some people were shocked, some were quiet. A few tried to mediate, suggesting stress, fear, misunderstanding. I sent the recording to anyone who questioned my judgment. That ended the debates. His sister picked up his things 2 days later. She didn't meet my eyes when she came to the door. She apologized, quietly, sincerely. "I didn't know," she said. "I'm so sorry." "I know," I replied. "Thank you for telling me." He tried to salvage the narrative online, a vague post about growing apart and mutual decisions. It lasted a few hours. His sister's honesty had already reached the right ears. The real story moved faster than his version ever could. His parents called again. This time there was no denial, just damage control. They asked if I would reconsider, if I would keep things private. "I'm not going to lie for him," I said. "I'm not going to protect a plan that would have destroyed me." They didn't ask again. By the end of the week, his reputation had taken a hit he couldn't talk his way out of. Friends distanced themselves. Invitations stopped. The confidence he used to wear like armor looked thin now, brittle. When people know you've been calculating behind a smile, the smile stops working. I changed the locks, packed the last of his things into labeled boxes, let his sister take them away. I didn't watch her load the car. I didn't need to. What surprised me most was how calm I felt. Not victorious, not angry. Resolved. The fallout wasn't something I chased. It arrived on its own, carried by the truth he'd underestimated. And once it landed, I was already gone. 3 months have passed. The house is quiet now, but not in a lonely way, in a clean way. The kind of quiet that lets you breathe without bracing yourself for judgment. I rearranged the furniture, took down the framed engagement photos that never quite felt like me anyway. The drawer where his sister found that lawyer's card now holds my most important documents: passport, contracts, insurance papers. And that recording. Not because I replay it, but because I remember who I was the moment I made it. I went back to the jewelry store the week after everything ended. Returned the necklace. Full refund. The salesperson apologized as if any of this had been her fault. I smiled and told her it was fine. I used that money to take myself on a solo vacation. A quiet beach, a book, no conversations about standards or expectations or stepping up. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't auditioning for anyone. His sister reached out once more, said he was in therapy now, said the scandal had cost him friends, damaged his reputation at work, and quietly stalled a promotion he'd been expecting. She asked if I felt any satisfaction. I didn't. I felt relieved. Relieved I found out before signing a marriage certificate. Relieved the truth came out before my life became a legal trap. Relieved I trusted my instincts the moment something felt wrong, even if it took time to fully understand why. People keep saying I dodged a bullet. They're right. But when it was happening, it didn't feel like a bullet. It felt like my entire future collapsing, like grief, like embarrassment, like questioning whether I had misread everything about the person I loved. Only now, with distance, can I see the shape of what almost happened. He didn't criticize that gift because it was cheap. He criticized it because it fit a story he needed to tell, a story where I was always lacking, always falling short, always not quite enough. That story wasn't about love, it was about leverage. The drawer held the truth before I was ready to see it, and I'm grateful it was opened. I'm dating again now, slowly, carefully, with a radar I didn't have before. Anyone who judges thoughtfulness by price. Anyone who casually questions why they're with me. Anyone who frames partnership as a transaction. Those people don't get a second date. If there's one lesson I want anyone listening to take from this, it's this. Pay attention to how someone treats your effort. Listen when love turns into evaluation. And if someone is already planning their exit while smiling at you, believe the evidence, not the performance. I didn't lose a fiancé. I escaped a future where love was conditional and betrayal was premeditated. And that's not a tragedy. That's a gift, far more valuable than any necklace ever could be.